Hash the hidden costs, what colonial Americans actually gave up. Picture this. You're scrolling through social media right now, probably comfortable, probably fed, definitely not worried about whether a bear is going to steal your dinner. But I want you to stop for a second and ask yourself something wild. Could you actually survive colonial America? And I don't mean the Instagram version with rustic aesthetics and charming bonnets. I mean the real deal. The version where your life expectancy drops by 40 years the moment you step off the boat, where privacy is a fairy tale, and where your morning routine could literally kill you. Today we're diving deep into something nobody talks about when they romanticize the past: the hidden costs, the things colonial Americans sacrificed that we don't even think about anymore because they're just part of being alive in the modern world. We're talking about freedoms so fundamental you've never even considered them freedoms, comforts so basic they're invisible, and choices so automatic you make them without thinking. Before we start this journey, do me a favor. If you're genuinely curious about how much harder life used to be, and if you want to understand why your ancestors would be absolutely mind blown by your bathroom, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more deep dives into history that actually makes you grateful for what you have. And drop a comment telling me which modern convenience you'd miss most if you woke up in 1720 tomorrow. My money's on toilet paper, but we'll get there. Now settle in, because for the next 2 hours, we're going to systematically destroy every romantic notion you've ever had about the good old days. We're talking about the cost of safety, the price of privacy, the sacrifice of choice, and the complete and utter absence of anything resembling personal freedom as we understand it today. This isn't just a history lesson. It's a reality check. And by the end, you're going to kiss your thermostat, hug your dentist, and maybe, just maybe, stop complaining about your Wi-Fi speed. Let's start with something so fundamental you probably don't even think of it as a luxury: the freedom to be alone. Hash the cost of privacy, living in a fishbowl you can't escape. Right now, wherever you are, you have the option to be alone. Close a door, put in headphones, drive somewhere quiet. It's so basic, so fundamental to your sense of self that you've never once considered it a privilege. But in colonial America, privacy didn't exist. Not as a concept, not as a possibility, not even as a distant dream. Let me paint you a picture that's going to make your skin crawl. You wake up in a bed shared with 5 other people. Your parents, your siblings, maybe a cousin who showed up last month and never left. The bed itself is one large communal sleeping platform, and the concept of personal space is so foreign that there isn't even a word for it. Your first conscious thought isn't about what you want to do today. It's about negotiating who gets out of bed first to face the freezing cold, because that's a group decision that affects everyone's warmth. You get dressed under a blanket while your family pretends not to watch, which they absolutely are, because where else would they look in a one-room cabin? Every item of clothing you own is visible to everyone. Every personal possession is communal property. The idea of having your own drawer, your own closet, your own anything is pure science fiction. You don't own space. You rent it from the collective family unit, and the rent is constant, unwavering visibility. Breakfast is a performance art piece where everyone watches everyone else eat, comment on eating habits, and monitors portion sizes with the intensity of a reality show judge. There's no slipping away to eat in your room because rooms are a luxury, and eating alone would be considered deeply suspicious. Are you hiding food? Are you sick? Are you plotting something? The absence of privacy breeds constant surveillance, not out of malice but out of necessity and habit. But here's where it gets truly claustrophobic. You can't escape to another room when you're angry because there are no other rooms. You can't take a walk to clear your head because leaving the property means abandoning your chores, and abandoned chores mean the whole family suffers. You can't even have a private thought without someone asking what you're thinking about, because silence and contemplation look like laziness or scheming. Now let's talk about the truly invasive stuff: bathroom privacy. It doesn't exist. The outhouse is a shared facility, usually without a lock, where family members and neighbors might interrupt you mid-business because they don't understand why you'd need time alone for basic biological functions. The concept of bathroom privacy, of having a moment to yourself behind a locked door, is so modern that colonial Americans would find it bizarre and antisocial. Personal correspondence. Forget about it. Letters are rare, expensive, and read aloud to the entire family because literacy is precious and private information is an oxymoron. If you receive a letter, everyone knows the contents before you've finished reading it yourself. Your mail is their mail. Your news is their news. Your secrets are community property. And relationships, romance. The idea of dating someone privately, of having conversations that nobody else hears, of developing a relationship before announcing it to the world. Impossible. Every interaction is supervised, monitored, and discussed at length by people who have nothing better to do than speculate about your intentions. Courtship happens in front of audiences. Marriage is negotiated like a business merger. And even after you're married, you're likely living with extended family, sharing walls so thin that privacy remains an illusion. The psychological cost of this constant exposure is staggering. You can't develop a sense of individual identity when you're never alone with your own thoughts. You can't figure out who you are separate from your family because separation doesn't exist. You can't have boundaries because boundaries require space, and space is the one thing nobody has. Think about the last time you needed to cry. Where did you go? Your room, your car, the bathroom. Now imagine not having any of those options. Imagine having to either cry in front of everyone or suppress your emotions entirely because there's literally nowhere private to fall apart. Colonial Americans developed emotional stoicism not because they were tougher than us, but because they had no choice. Vulnerability requires privacy, and privacy was a luxury they couldn't afford. Here's what really drives this home. You know that feeling when you've been around people all day and you just need an hour alone to recharge. Colonial Americans never, ever got that hour. Not for their entire lives. From birth to death, they were constantly surrounded by family, neighbors, and community members who knew everything about them. Their struggles, their failures, their embarrassments, their bodily functions, their arguments, their fears. Nothing was hidden because nothing could be hidden. The modern concept of introversion wouldn't have made sense to them. Not because introverts didn't exist, but because the luxury of solitude required to understand and accommodate that personality type was unavailable. You were expected to be social and communal because you had no other option. The toll this took on mental health, on individual development, on personal growth, is something we can barely comprehend because we've never experienced its opposite. So the next time you close your bedroom door, take a moment to appreciate what you're doing. You're exercising a freedom that most humans throughout history never had. The freedom to be alone. The freedom to have private thoughts in a private space. The freedom to exist without an audience. It's not just convenient, it's revolutionary. The cost of safety, living in constant, quiet terror. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you genuinely feared for your life in your own home? When did you last go to bed wondering if you'd wake up because something fundamental about your environment was actively trying to kill you? For most of us, the answer is never. We live in a bubble of safety so complete, so all-encompassing, that we've forgotten what it feels like to exist in constant, low-level danger. Colonial Americans didn't have that luxury. They lived every single day with the knowledge that death was one infection away, one winter storm away, one accident away. And unlike us, they didn't have backup plans. No hospitals, no emergency services, no safety net of any kind. When danger came, and it always came, they faced it with nothing but improvised solutions and desperate hope. Let's start with the house itself, which is less protective shelter and more wooden box actively conspiring to harm you. The floors are either dirt or rough-hewn planks filled with splinters waiting to embed themselves in bare feet. Every step is a calculated risk. The walls are full of gaps that let in cold, wind, and more importantly, sparks from the fire that's your only heat source. The chimney, if you're lucky enough to have one, is a constant fire hazard made of sticks and mud that degrades with every use. Speaking of fire, let's talk about the elephant in every colonial room. Your heating system, your cooking method, your light source, and your most likely cause of death all come from the same place. An open flame that you must maintain constantly or freeze, but that you must also monitor obsessively or burn alive. The hearth is simultaneously your best friend and your worst enemy, and managing this relationship requires constant vigilance that would exhaust a modern person within hours. Every night before bed, someone has to bank the fire just right. Hot enough to provide embers for morning, cool enough not to spread. Get it wrong in either direction and you're either dead from hypothermia or dead from burning. There's no middle ground, no room for error, no second chances. And this calculation happens every single night of your life, with the stakes being literally life and death. But fire is just one threat. Let's talk about food safety, or more accurately, the complete absence of it. You have no refrigeration, no FDA, no expiration dates, no way to know if the meat you're about to eat is safe or teeming with bacteria that will kill you slowly and painfully over the next week. Every meal is an act of faith. You smell it, you look at it, you make your best guess, and you pray. Sometimes prayer isn't enough. Food poisoning in colonial America isn't an inconvenient night of discomfort. It's a potentially fatal condition with no treatment except waiting to see if your body can fight it off. Dysentery, typhoid, cholera, all transmitted through contaminated food and water, all horrifically common, all capable of killing you in days. And the worst part, you have no way to know which meals are safe. You're just rolling the dice 3 times a day, hoping your luck holds. Water is equally terrifying. The stream you drink from is the same stream your animals drink from, the same stream your neighbors use, the same stream that dead animals sometimes wash into. You have no filtration system, no water treatment, no way to kill bacteria except boiling, which requires fire and time you might not have. Every cup of water is a calculated risk. Every drink could be the one that ends you. And then there's medical safety, which is perhaps the most horrifying absence of all. You know that cut on your hand you got from cooking last week, the one you put a Band-Aid on and forgot about. In colonial America, that cut could kill you. One infection, one streak of red traveling up your arm, and you're facing a choice between dying slowly from sepsis or having someone saw off your limb with no anesthesia. Those are your options: death or amputation. Choose quickly. Childbirth is Russian roulette. 1 in 8 women dies giving birth. Think about that statistic. Look at 8 women you know. One of them, statistically, would not survive having a baby in colonial times. And the bobbies. Infant mortality rates hover around 30 to 50% depending on the region and year. Having a child means accepting that you might die, your baby might die, or both of you might die, and there's absolutely nothing anyone can do to improve those odds significantly. The constant presence of death reshapes everything. You don't make long-term plans because long-term might not exist. You don't invest emotionally in infants until they survive their first year because getting attached to someone who probably won't make it is too painful. You live with the knowledge that any day could be your last, and not in an abstract philosophical way, but in a very real, very present way. Disease sweeps through communities like wildfire because nobody understands germ theory. One sick person can infect an entire town. One outbreak can wipe out half the children in a settlement. And there's no explanation, no understanding, no way to prevent it. People just start dying and you pray you're not next and you bury the dead and you move on because what else can you do? The psychological toll of this constant danger is immeasurable. Imagine living every day knowing that a simple accident could end your life, that your children probably won't all survive to adulthood, that your own survival is dependent on factors completely outside your control. The stress alone would break most modern people, but colonial Americans didn't have the luxury of breaking down. They just endured, because endurance was the only option. So tonight, when you brush your teeth with fluoride toothpaste, when you check your smoke detector, when you drink tap water without a second thought, when you put antibacterial ointment on a cut, remember what you're doing. You're exercising a level of safety that would seem like magic to your ancestors. You're living in a world where survival isn't a daily struggle against constant threats. You're safe in ways they couldn't even imagine. And that's safety. That's not luck. That's civilization. That's centuries of human progress built specifically to protect you from the dangers that killed your ancestors. Don't take it for granted. Hash the cost of comfort, pain as a constant companion. Here's a question that's going to sound stupid until you really think about it. When was the last time you were genuinely, inescapably uncomfortable for an extended period? Not inconvenienced, not annoyed, but actually physically uncomfortable with no relief in sight. For most of us, the answer is basically never, because modern life is engineered from the ground up to minimize discomfort at every turn. Colonial Americans existed in a state of permanent physical discomfort that would drive us absolutely insane within hours. And I'm not talking about occasional hardship. I'm talking about bone-deep, never-ending, soul-crushing discomfort that started the moment they woke up and didn't stop until they fell asleep. And even then, sleep itself was uncomfortable. Let's start with temperature because it's the most immediately obvious source of misery. Right now, wherever you are, you're probably comfortable. Maybe you adjusted the thermostat earlier. Maybe you put on a sweater. Maybe you moved to a sunnier spot. The point is, you had options and you exercised control over your environment. Colonial Americans had exactly one temperature control option: fire. And fire is a terrible temperature control system. In winter, you're either huddled directly against the hearth, roasting on one side while your back freezes, or you're anywhere else in the house, slowly turning into a popsicle. There's no middle ground, no comfortable ambient temperature, no consistent warmth. You're either too hot or too cold, constantly shifting position, trying to find some mythical sweet spot that doesn't exist. And at night, forget about it. You pile on every blanket you own, every piece of clothing you can layer. You might even share body heat with 5 other people, and you still wake up with frost on the inside of the windows and no feeling in your toes. The cold seeps into your bones, into your joints, until aching becomes your baseline and comfort becomes a distant memory. Summer is equally miserable, but in the opposite direction. No air conditioning means you're just sweltering in humid, stagnant air that never moves. You can open windows, but that lets in mosquitoes, flies, and whatever else is buzzing around outside. You can't escape the heat. You can't cool down. You just sweat constantly, attracting more insects, soaking through your one set of clothes, creating a permanent state of damp misery. But temperature is just the beginning. Let's talk about seating, because apparently comfortable chairs weren't invented until someone finally asked, what if furniture didn't actively hurt us? Colonial benches and stools are wooden torture devices designed with all the ergonomic consideration of a 2x4. No cushions, no support, no give whatsoever. Sitting for any length of time means numbness, aching, and eventually a reorganization of your spine that chiropractors would weep over. Sleeping is barely better. Your mattress is a sack of corn husks or straw that flattens over time, creating lumps in unexpected places and poking through the fabric to jab you at random intervals. There are no springs, no memory foam, no comfort layer, just agricultural waste between you and wooden slats, and somewhere around hour 3 of trying to sleep, you start to wonder if the floor might actually be softer. Every single task involves physical discomfort that we've engineered out of modern life. Washing clothes means kneeling by cold water until your knees scream. Cooking means standing over an open fire in a hot kitchen. Chopping wood means blisters, splinters, and a back that feels like it's been replaced with rusty hinges. Farming means bent backs, sore muscles, and hands so calloused they're barely recognizable as hands. And your feet. Oh, your poor feet. Colonial shoes are leather torture devices with wooden soles that provide roughly the same comfort as strapping planks to your feet and hopping for the best. No arch support, no cushioning, no flexibility. Every step on uneven ground is an adventure in pain, And by the end of the day, your feet are so angry they're considering leaving without you. Clothing adds another layer of misery. Everything is rough, scratchy, and designed without any consideration for human comfort. Linen shirts feel like wearing a very aggressive hug from a wool sweater. Wool itself is itchy under the best circumstances, and these are not the best circumstances. And layers are necessary for warmth, which means you're constantly choosing between freezing or being wrapped in fabric that feels like it's actively trying to remove your top layer of skin. Women have it even worse. Stays, the predecessor to corsets, squeeze and reshape the torso into fashionable forms that make breathing an optional activity. Multiple layers of petticoats add weight and heat, and all of this has to be worn all day, every day, because modesty and social expectations don't care about your ability to breathe deeply or move freely. But physical discomfort is just the start. Let's talk about the complete absence of pain relief. You have a headache. Too bad, toothache. Suffer through it or have someone yank the tooth with pliers and no numbing. Back pain, joint pain, muscle pain. Your options are grin and bear it, drink enough alcohol to not care, or try some herbal remedy that probably doesn't work but at least gives you something to do besides hurt. Modern pain management is so effective and so available that we've forgotten what it's like to just hurt continuously with no relief. You pop an ibuprofen, and 2 hours later you've forgotten you ever had a headache. Colonial Americans just hurt, all the time from everything, and learned to function through it because what else were they going to do? And here's the psychological piece nobody talks about. Constant physical discomfort wears you down in ways that go beyond the physical. It affects your mood, your patience, your ability to think clearly. It colors every interaction and every decision. You're never operating at full capacity because some part of you is always dealing with being cold, being hot, being in pain, being uncomfortable. The absence of comfort means the absence of rest. You can't truly relax because there's nowhere comfortable to relax. You can't recharge because every position is vaguely painful. You just exist in a state of permanent low-level misery that becomes your new normal, and eventually you forget that life could be any other way. So tonight, when you adjust your thermostat, when you sink into your cushioned chair, when you take an aspirin for your headache, when you climb into your comfortable bed with your supportive mattress, take a second to appreciate what you're experiencing. You're living in a state of physical comfort that represents centuries of human innovation, specifically designed to eliminate the suffering your ancestors just accepted as part of life. Comfort isn't a luxury, it's a revolution, and you're living in it. Hash the cost of health, your body as enemy territory. Let me tell you about something that's going to fundamentally change how you think about your own body. Right now, your body is probably working pretty well. Your teeth are in your head. Your limbs bend where they're supposed to. You can see, hear, walk, and generally function without thinking too hard about it. And when something goes wrong, you have options: doctors, medications, treatments, solutions. Colonial Americans had none of that. Their relationship with their own bodies was fundamentally different from ours because their bodies were constantly, actively trying to kill them, and there was virtually nothing they could do about it. Let's start with teeth, because dental health is one of those things we completely take for granted until it's gone. You probably brushed your teeth this morning with fluoride toothpaste, maybe flossed, maybe used mouthwash. It took 3 minutes and you didn't think twice about it. Colonial Americans had twigs, sometimes, if they thought about it, which they often didn't because dental hygiene as a concept barely existed. The result: by age 30 you're missing teeth, not one tooth, teeth, multiple, gone, fallen out, broken off, or extracted with pliers by someone who's definitely not a dentist because dentists haven't been invented yet. Your remaining teeth are brown, decayed, painful, and on borrowed time. Eating is an adventure in pain management. Smiling is something you do with your mouth closed. And that chronic toothache you've had for 3 years. You just live with it because the alternative is having someone yank it out while you're fully conscious and screaming. But teeth are just the beginning. Let's talk about vision. You know those glasses you're maybe wearing right now, the ones that let you see clearly and function normally. In colonial America, if you need glasses, you're just out of luck. Some wealthy people might have crude spectacles, but for most people, poor vision means poor vision forever. You just squint a lot and accept that you'll never see fine details again. Going blind isn't a medical emergency that requires immediate intervention. It's just something that happens, often from preventable infections or treatable conditions, and once your vision is gone, it's gone forever. No surgery, no corrective lenses, no adaptation technology. You're just blind now, completely dependent on others, your entire life fundamentally altered because nobody knows how to fix something that modern medicine considers routine. Hearing loss, same story. Infections, injuries, or just aging means your hearing deteriorates until you can't follow conversations anymore. No hearing aids, no cochlear implants, no amplification devices. You just slowly lose your connection to the world of sound and learn to live in increasing isolation. And let's talk about mobility because colonial America is absolutely brutal on joints and bones. You work physically demanding jobs from childhood. No ergonomics, no proper equipment, no safety measures. The result is chronic pain, damaged joints, and bodies that break down decades before they should. By 40, you move like you're 80. By 60, if you make it that far, you're practically immobile. Arthritis isn't a condition that gets managed with medication and physical therapy. It's just how your hands look now. Swollen, painful, barely functional. You can't grip things properly. Fine motor control is a memory, but you keep working because stopping means starving, so you just push through pain that would send a modern person to the emergency room. Broken bones are a catastrophe. No x-rays to verify alignment. No casts to immobilize properly. No physical therapy to restore function. Someone sets the bone, splints it with wood and hope, and you pray it heals straight. Often it doesn't. People walk around with crooked limbs, permanent limps, and chronic pain from fractures that never healed correctly. But the real horror is internal problems. You have appendicitis. You die. Gallstones. You suffer until they kill you or you get lucky and pass them. Kidney stones. Same deal. Hernia. Hope it doesn't strangulate because surgery is basically just cutting you open and hoping you don't die of infection, which you probably will. Cancer is a death sentence delivered slowly and painfully. No chemotherapy, no radiation, no surgery with any reasonable survival rate. You just waste away while your family watches, and everyone knows there's nothing to be done except make you comfortable, which is hard to do when you don't have effective pain medication. Infections are the universal killer. That cut on your hand could be nothing, could be sepsis. That sore throat could be nothing, could be scarlet fever. That cough could be nothing, could be tuberculosis. And there's no way to know until it's too late, and by then you're just rolling the dice on whether your immune system can fight it off. Preventative medicine doesn't exist as a concept. You don't get checkups. You don't screen for diseases. You don't catch things early. You just live your life until something goes catastrophically wrong, and then you deal with it using remedies that range from useless to actively harmful. The psychological impact of this constant vulnerability is staggering. Imagine knowing that your body is a time bomb and you have no control over when it explodes. Any day could bring a health crisis that ends your life. Any symptom could be the beginning of something fatal, and there's nothing you can do except wait and hope. You can't trust your own body because it's constantly betraying you in small and large ways. Pain is background noise. Illness is expected. Physical decline is inevitable and rapid. And medical intervention is more likely to kill you than save you because doctors are working with theories that are mostly wrong and treatments that are mostly guessing. So when you visit your dentist, when you put in your contacts, when you take medication that actually works, when you get surgery with anesthesia and sterile equipment, when you recover from infections because you have antibiotics, remember what you're experiencing. You're living in a world where your body is your ally instead of your enemy, where health problems are challenges to overcome instead of death sentences to accept. Your ancestors would weep with joy at the sight of a modern pharmacy, at the idea of pain that can actually be stopped, at the concept of chronic conditions that can be managed instead of endured. Your health isn't just better than theirs. It's from a completely different universe. Hash the cost of choice, the illusion of control. Here's something that's going to sound strange until you sit with it for a minute. How many choices have you made today? Real choices, where you evaluated options and picked the one you preferred. You chose what to wear from your closet full of clothes. You chose what to eat from multiple available options. You chose how to spend your time from an infinite menu of possibilities. You've made so many choices that you've stopped noticing you're making them. Colonial Americans didn't have that luxury. The overwhelming majority of their lives was predetermined by circumstance, necessity, and social expectations they couldn't deviate from without catastrophic consequences. Their entire existence was a narrow path with no turnoffs, no detours, and absolutely no room for personal preference. Let's start with the most fundamental choice that defines human experience: what you want to be when you grow up. Right now, the world is theoretically open to you. You can pursue education in virtually any field. You can change careers multiple times. You can reinvent yourself whenever you want. Colonial Americans got exactly one choice, and that choice was already made before they were born based on what their parents did. Your father is a farmer. Congratulations, you're a farmer. Your father is a blacksmith. You're learning to work metal. Your mother keeps house. If you're a girl, that's your future too. There is no exploring different interests, no discovering hidden talents, no pivoting to something you're passionate about. You do what your family does because that's how survival works when skills and resources are inherited. And that lack of choice extends to every aspect of life. Where you live isn't a decision you make based on job opportunities or personal preference. You live where your family has always lived, probably in the same house, possibly in the same room, until you die or the house burns down. Moving requires resources most people don't have, and abandoning social networks that mean the difference between survival and starvation. Who you marry, not really your choice either. Oh sure, you might have some input, but the decision is heavily influenced by economic necessity, family alliances, and social expectations that treat romance as a bonus feature rather than the main event. Love is nice if it happens, but compatibility in terms of work capacity and childbearing potential is what actually matters. When you marry is equally predetermined. Women marry young because that's when they're most valuable for childbearing. Men marry when they can support a family, which means when they inherit property or establish their trade. Personal readiness, emotional maturity, or preference don't factor into the equation because they can't afford to. How many children you have isn't a choice modern birth control has given us. It's just a consequence of being married and biologically capable. You have as many children as biology delivers until you can't anymore, and you pray enough survive to support you in old age because that's your only retirement plan. What you eat isn't based on preference or nutritional knowledge. You eat what you can grow, preserve, and afford. Variety is a luxury. Taste preference is irrelevant. You eat to survive, not to enjoy, and you're grateful when there's anything to eat at all. How you spend your time is completely dictated by survival needs. No hobbies, no personal projects, no relaxation time. Every waking hour is allocated to tasks that keep you alive. You work because not working means starving. Rest is something you do when you're too exhausted to continue, not something you schedule for self-care. Even your thoughts aren't entirely your own. Religious and social orthodoxy dictates acceptable beliefs, acceptable behaviors, acceptable thoughts. Deviation is punished by social ostracism or worse. You can't explore different philosophies or question established norms without risking everything. Your inner life is just as constrained as your outer life. Education. not a choice for most people. If you're lucky enough to get any formal education, it's brief, basic, and oriented toward making you a functional worker, not a thoughtful individual. Books are rare and expensive. Ideas are dangerous. Curiosity is discouraged unless it's directed toward approved channels. And the thing that really drives this home is that you can't even choose to leave. The colonial world is geographically limited. Most people never travel more than 20 miles from their birthplace. Not because they don't want to, but because travel is dangerous, expensive, and there's nowhere to go where life would be fundamentally different. The entire world operates on the same basic assumptions about hierarchy, work, and survival. Your personality, your preferences, your talents, your dreams, none of that matters. You are your role: farmer, wife, blacksmith, mother, servant. Your individual identity is subsumed into your function, and function is determined by accident of birth. The psychological weight of living without real choice is crushing in ways we can't fully comprehend. Imagine never getting to decide anything important about your life, never getting to explore what you might be good at, never getting to pursue something just because it interests you, never getting to say, "I don't want this," and have that mean anything. Modern life bombards us with choices until we're exhausted by decision fatigue. We complain about having too many options, too many possibilities, too much freedom. But that freedom, that overwhelming array of choices, that's one of the greatest gifts of the modern world. You get to choose your career, your partner, your home, your family size, your beliefs, your education, your hobbies, your future. Not perfectly, not without constraints, but you get to choose in ways your ancestors couldn't imagine. So the next time you're paralyzed by options, frustrated by decisions, overwhelmed by possibilities, remember what you're actually experiencing. You're living in a world where your life is yours to direct, where you have agency, where your choices matter. That's not a burden, that's a miracle. Hash the cost of knowledge, living in darkness. I want you to imagine something that's going to seem impossible. Imagine not knowing how anything works, not understanding why the sun rises or what causes rain, or why people get sick, or how bobbies are made beyond the obvious mechanics. Imagine living in a world where every natural phenomenon is a mystery, every illness is potentially supernatural, and every question has answers that range from wrong to catastrophically wrong. That was daily life for colonial Americans. They existed in a state of profound ignorance about the basic functioning of their world, not because they were stupid, but because humanity hadn't figured it out yet. And that ignorance had consequences that touched every aspect of their lives. Let's start with medicine, because medical ignorance was literally fatal. They didn't know about germs. The idea that tiny invisible creatures could make you sick was pure fantasy. Instead, illness was explained by bad air, imbalanced humors, divine punishment, or witchcraft. And when your fundamental understanding of disease is completely wrong, your treatments are worse than useless. You're sick, let's drain some of your blood because obviously you have too much. Never mind that blood loss weakens you and reduces your ability to fight infection. The theory says balance the humors, so we're bleeding you until you're pale and weak, still sick, must need more bleeding. Or maybe we'll induce vomiting and diarrhea to purge the bad humors. Sure, dehydration is dangerous, but we don't know that yet. We just know that after you've violently evacuated everything from both ends, sometimes you get better. Correlation equals causation, right? The absence of germ theory means nobody washes their hands. Not doctors, not midwives, not anyone. Why would you? You can't see germs. You don't know they exist. So the doctor who just performed an autopsy walks directly to deliver a baby without washing up because there's no reason to think he should. The result: childbed fever kills women by the thousands. A completely preventable infection spread by the very people trying to help. And nobody understands why until the 1800s, when someone suggests maybe doctors should wash their hands, and the medical establishment rejects the idea as insulting. But medical ignorance is just one facet of a much larger problem. They don't understand nutrition. They know you need food, but they have no concept of vitamins, minerals, or balanced diet. Scurvy kills sailors by the thousands for centuries before someone figures out citrus fruits prevent it. And even then, the knowledge spreads slowly because nobody understands why it works. Colonial diets are nutritionally terrible, heavy on carbohydrates, light on vegetables and variety. The result is malnutrition, stunted growth, and deficiency diseases that could be prevented with basic nutritional knowledge we teach in elementary school. They don't understand weather. Rain, drought, storms, all are acts of God or random chance. No weather prediction, no understanding of climate patterns, no ability to prepare for seasonal changes beyond observing that winter usually comes after fall. Farming is an exercise in gambling against forces you can't predict or understand. They don't understand astronomy beyond basic observation. The sun and moon move across the sky, but why? How? Nobody knows. Are they gods, giant fires, holes in the celestial sphere? Every culture has theories, all of them wrong. The practical impact. No accurate navigation. No understanding of seasons beyond observation. No ability to predict eclipses without simply recording patterns. They don't understand chemistry, so food preservation is trial and error passed down through generations. Salt preserves meat, but why? Nobody knows. Smoking works, but the mechanism is a mystery. Some foods keep, others rot, and the difference is explained by luck, divine favor, or folk wisdom that's half observation and half superstition. The absence of scientific knowledge means everything is harder, more dangerous, and more mysterious than it needs to be. You can't solve problems effectively because you don't understand what's causing them. You can't improve processes because you don't know why they work. You're just following patterns established by ancestors who were equally ignorant, hoping that tradition contains wisdom when it often contains nothing but habit. And the psychological impact of living in a world you don't understand is profound. Everything is potentially magical, potentially dangerous, potentially supernatural. Illness might be natural or it might be a curse. That crop failure might be bad soil or it might be divine punishment for your sins. Your neighbor's good fortune might be hard work or it might be witchcraft. This creates a world of constant anxiety because nothing has predictable, understandable causes. You can't control what you don't understand. You can't prevent what you can't explain. You're just stumbling through existence hoping you don't anger the wrong forces, human or otherwise. And when bad things happen, as they constantly do, you have no framework for understanding why beyond punishment, randomness, or malevolence. Your child dies and you don't know it was a preventable bacterial infection. You just know God took them, or maybe someone cursed you, or maybe you deserved it for some sin you can't identify. The modern world has given us something so fundamental we barely notice it. Understanding. You know why you get sick. You know how to prevent most illnesses. You know what causes weather. You know how your body works. You know how to preserve food safely. You know how plants grow. You know how bodies develop. You know how the universe functions at scales from microscopic to cosmic. That knowledge is power, but more importantly, it's peace of mind. When something goes wrong, you can usually figure out why and fix it. When something works, you know why so you can repeat it. You're not at the mercy of mysterious forces. You're operating in a comprehensible universe governed by understandable rules. Your ancestors lived in darkness, literal and metaphorical, constantly afraid of forces they couldn't see, understand, or control. You live in light, the light of knowledge accumulated over centuries, the light of scientific understanding that turned mystery into mechanism, the light that lets you live without constant fear of the unknown. Don't take that for granted. Hash the cost of cleanliness, marinating in your own filth. Okay, let's talk about something that's going to make you uncomfortable. When was the last time you went more than 2 days without bathing? For most of us, the answer is basically never, because the idea of being genuinely dirty for extended periods is so unpleasant we avoid it at all costs. We have easy access to hot water, soap, clean clothes, and the luxury of caring about our hygiene. Colonial Americans lived in filth, not occasionally, not when times were hard, constantly. As a baseline, the level of cleanliness we consider normal would have been incomprehensible luxury to them, achieved maybe once a month if they were particularly motivated. Let's break down exactly how dirty we're talking. A full bath, the kind where you immerse your body in water and actually get clean, happened maybe once a week at best, often once a month or less. The effort required was staggering. Haul water from the well or stream multiple trips with heavy buckets. Heat that water over the fire, which takes hours. Fill a wooden tub that leaks and barely fits one person. And then the kicker, the whole family uses the same water. The youngest or highest-ranking family member goes first in relatively clean water. Then everyone else takes turns in increasingly murky, increasingly disgusting water. By the time the last person gets their turn, they're essentially bathing in diluted dirt soup. You come out arguably not cleaner, just redistributed. Between baths, which again might be weeks apart, you're just accumulating layers of sweat, dirt, and biological functions. No daily showers, no fresh start each morning, just the continuous accumulation of grime that becomes your new normal. After a few days, you stop noticing your own smell. After a week, you're marinating in it. After a month, you're basically a walking biohazard. Clothes are washed even less frequently than bodies. Doing laundry is an all-day affair involving hauling water, heating it, scrubbing with harsh lye soap that damages fabric, rinsing, and hanging everything to dry. Most people own one, maybe two sets of clothes. You wear them until they're visibly filthy or standing up on their own, then you face the nightmare of laundry day. The result? Everyone smells, all the time. Body odor isn't occasional embarrassment, it's universal reality. You smell bad, your family smells bad, your neighbors smell bad. The whole town smells like a locker room that's been marinating for months. And because everyone smells, nobody notices anymore. It's just the background odor of humanity. But it gets worse. Hair is rarely washed because drying takes forever and you can't afford the time or hot water. Women's long hair becomes a festival of accumulated oils, dirt, and whatever else gets trapped in there. Men's hair isn't much better. The solution? Cover it with a cap or hat and try not to think about what's happening underneath. Teeth, as we discussed, are brushed rarely if at all. Dental hygiene is aspirational at best. The result is breath that could peel paint and mouths that are basically bacterial ecosystems. Kissing must have been quite an adventure. Hands are filthy. You work with them constantly, digging in dirt, handling animals, cooking, building, and washing them is an afterthought at best. No running water at the sink. No hand soap readily available. Just the occasional rinse if you remember, and that's it. The concept of washing hands before eating or after using the outhouse, not really a thing. Speaking of the outhouse, let's talk about toilet paper, or more accurately, the complete absence of it. You're using corn cobs, leaves, scraps of old fabric. Or sometimes just your hand and whatever water you can spare. And then you're going right back to food preparation and daily life with minimal hand washing, because you don't know about germs. The cumulative effect of all this is a population that's just constantly covered in a biological film of their own making. Skin conditions are rampant. Rashes, infections, sores, all exacerbated by poor hygiene and no understanding of how to prevent them. Lice are basically universal. Everyone has them. Head lice, body lice, probably other types nobody wants to talk about. You just accept them as roommates. And the health consequences are severe. All this filth breeds disease, typhus from lice, cholera and dysentery from poor sanitation, skin infections from never being properly clean, respiratory infections from living in close quarters with people who never properly bathe. The dirt isn't just unpleasant, it's actively killing people. But here's what really hammers home how different their world was. They didn't know any better. The connection between cleanliness and health wasn't understood. Bathing too frequently was considered unhealthy, potentially letting disease in through open pores. Being dirty was just part of life, not a problem to solve. So when you step into your hot shower this morning, when you use your scented soap and shampoo, when you put on fresh, clean clothes, when you brush your teeth and use deodorant and wash your hands multiple times a day without thinking about it, recognize what you're doing. You're exercising a level of personal hygiene that represents a revolution in human existence. You're clean, genuinely, thoroughly clean, and you get to be clean every single day, multiple times a day if you want. That's not normal in the scope of human history. That's extraordinary. That's a privilege your ancestors would have gladly traded years of their life for. Cleanliness isn't just next to godliness. It's next to modernity. It's the foundation of health, comfort, and dignity. And you have it so easily you've forgotten it's a miracle. The cost of connection. Isolation beyond understanding. Let me describe a nightmare scenario for a modern person. You live in a world where communication with anyone beyond walking distance takes weeks or months, where news from the outside world arrives sporadically and often outdated by months, where you might never see someone again once they move away, where your entire social world is limited to maybe 200 people, and that's if you live in a relatively populated area. This was reality for colonial Americans, and the psychological cost of that isolation is something we can barely comprehend because we've never experienced true disconnection from the larger world. Think about your phone. Right now, you can communicate instantly with someone on the other side of the planet. You can see their face, hear their voice, send them messages that arrive in seconds. You can access the accumulated knowledge of human civilization with a few taps. You can watch events unfold in real time anywhere in the world. You're connected to billions of people and infinite information. Colonial Americans had letters, maybe, if they were literate, which many weren't, if they could afford paper and postage, which they often couldn't, and those letters took weeks or months to arrive, assuming they arrived at all. Postal service was unreliable. Letters got lost. People died before their correspondence reached them. Communication with distant family members was agonizing. You send a letter and then wait. Weeks pass. Months pass. Did they receive it? Are they okay? Did something happen? You have no way of knowing. You just wait in anxiety, hoping eventually a response arrives. And if someone moved away to another colony, to another country, back to Europe, that was often goodbye forever. No phone calls, no video chats, no easy visits. They were just gone from your life, and your only connection was infrequent letters that might stop coming at any time, leaving you to wonder if they stopped writing or stopped living. The death of a distant family member might not reach you for months. You could be going about your life, unaware that your parent, your sibling, your child died weeks ago, and by the time you get the news, they're long buried. No chance to say goodbye. No final conversations. Just belated grief for a loss that already happened. News from the wider world was equally disconnected. Major events, wars, political changes, discoveries, all reached colonial America months after they occurred. You're living in a delayed timeline, always behind, always out of touch with what's happening beyond your immediate vicinity. And your social world was tiny. You knew everyone in your town, and that was essentially your entire social universe. You saw the same people day after day, year after year, decade after decade. No fresh perspectives. No new faces except the occasional stranger passing through. Your conversations were with people you'd known your entire life, discussing the same topics, the same gossip, the same limited range of shared experience. The absence of diversity in thought, experience, and perspective meant intellectual stagnation. You couldn't easily encounter new ideas because ideas spread slowly and only through personal contact or rare books. Your worldview was shaped by your immediate community, and breaking free from local orthodoxy was nearly impossible. Dating pools were absurdly limited. You married someone from your town or maybe the next town over. Your choices were maybe 20 people of appropriate age and status. That's it. No expanding your search. No meeting people from different backgrounds. You picked from the local options or remained unmarried. Entertainment was equally limited. The same stories told by the same people. The same songs sung at the same gatherings. The same festivals year after year. No new content. No streaming services with infinite options. Just the repetition of local traditions and the creative efforts of people you've known forever. And if you wanted to learn something new, to study a subject, to explore an interest, your options were incredibly limited. Books were rare and expensive. Teachers were few. Universities were for the wealthy elite. Most people never had the chance to pursue intellectual interests because the resources simply didn't exist in their isolated communities. The psychological impact of this isolation is profound. Your entire understanding of the world was filtered through the few hundred people you knew. Your ambitions were limited by local possibilities. Your sense of self was shaped by a tiny community's expectations. You couldn't reinvent yourself because everyone knew who you were and had known since birth. But perhaps the most crushing aspect was the loneliness. Not social loneliness, you were rarely alone, but existential loneliness. The sense that the world was vast and you were stuck in one tiny corner of it, disconnected from everything happening everywhere else, unable to reach out, unable to connect, unable to participate in the larger human experience. Modern connectivity has problems: information overload, social media toxicity, the anxiety of constant connection. But it's also given us something precious: the ability to maintain relationships across any distance, the ability to access human knowledge and creativity, the ability to find our people wherever they are, the ability to participate in global conversations and movements. You're not trapped by geography. You're not limited to local options. You're not cut off from the world. You have the entire human experience available to you, and that's not just convenient. It's liberating. So the next time you're frustrated by a delayed text message or annoyed by slow Wi-Fi, remember what you're actually experiencing: near instantaneous global communication, connection to anyone, anywhere, anytime, access to all of human knowledge and creativity. Your ancestors would have thought you were describing heaven. The cost of time, slavery to the sun. Here's something you've probably never thought about. When does your day start? Maybe you wake up at 7 for work, maybe 9 if you're lucky, maybe noon if you're self-employed and live the dream. The point is, you choose. Sure, you have obligations, but fundamentally you control when your day begins and ends. You can work at night if you want. You can stay up late. You can sleep in. Time is a tool you manipulate to suit your needs. Colonial Americans were slaves to the sun. Their entire existence was dictated by daylight hours in ways that modern people cannot comprehend. And this wasn't just inconvenient. It fundamentally shaped every aspect of their lives in ways that limited freedom, creativity, and human potential. Let's start with the most basic fact: no electric lights. When the sun goes down, you're done. Oh sure, you have candles and maybe oil lamps if you're wealthy, but these are expensive, provide minimal light, and create fire hazards. Most people simply stopped productive activity when darkness fell because you literally can't see what you're doing. Your workday starts at sunrise because every hour of daylight is precious. Sleeping past dawn means wasting valuable time you can't get back. There's no sleeping in. No lazy mornings. The rooster crows, you get up, and you immediately begin working because you have maybe 12 to 14 hours of usable light and about 20 hours of necessary tasks. In winter, when days are short, this becomes desperate. You're racing against darkness, trying to accomplish critical tasks before you lose the light. Cooking, cleaning, repairs, All must happen in a compressed window. Fall behind and you're trying to work by inadequate candlelight, wasting resources and risking accidents. Summer is better but brings its own problems. Days are long, which means you're working long. 15, 16-hour workdays are normal because the sun is up and work needs doing. No knocking off at 5. No weekend. No work-life balance. You work while you can see and you rest when you can't. Evening leisure doesn't exist in any meaningful way. Once the sun sets, you're essentially trapped inside with minimal light. Reading is difficult and hard on the eyes. Detailed work is impossible. Social activities are limited to conversation by dim firelight. Most people just go to bed because there's nothing else to do and candles are too expensive to waste on entertainment. This dependency on sunlight means your life has no flexibility. Can't work night shift. Can't adjust your schedule to your personal rhythm. Morning person or night owl doesn't matter. Everyone operates on sun time. Your body's natural inclinations are irrelevant. The sun dictates, you obey. And it's not just personal time that's constrained. Social events must happen during daylight or early evening. Community gatherings can't run late. Travel must be completed before dark because navigating without light is dangerous. Your entire social life is compressed into sunlit hours already packed with work. The seasonal variation makes it worse. Winter in northern colonies means maybe 8 hours of usable daylight. 8 hours to accomplish all cooking, cleaning, farming, repairs, animal care, and everything else necessary for survival. You're constantly behind, constantly racing darkness, constantly stressed about time running out. And there's no catching up. Can't work late to finish a project. Can't pull an all-nighter to meet a deadline. When darkness falls, you stop. Tasks left undone remain undone until tomorrow, and tomorrow brings new tasks equally urgent. This creates a tyranny of immediacy. Everything is urgent because you have limited time to accomplish it. Long-term planning is difficult when you're constantly firefighting daily survival needs. Innovation is hard when every daylight hour is allocated to established routines. Creativity requires time to think, experiment, fail, and try again. Time that doesn't exist when you're racing the sunset. Even rest is dictated by light. You sleep when it's dark because what else are you going to do? No reading in bed. No late-night conversations. No midnight snacks. Just darkness and sleep, because staying awake means burning expensive resources for no productive purpose. The psychological weight of this time pressure is crushing. Imagine every single day feeling rushed. Every task carrying urgency because you might run out of light. Every evening bringing frustration about what didn't get done. Every morning starting with anxiety about fitting everything in. That's not just stressful. It's exhausting in ways that go beyond physical labor. And you can never escape it, ever. Your entire life from birth to death is governed by the sun's schedule. You have no control, no flexibility, no ability to adapt time to suit your needs. You're just a prisoner of natural light cycles, and that imprisonment shapes who you can be and what you can accomplish. Modern artificial lighting seems simple, even trivial. Flip a switch, the room illuminates. But that simple act represents one of the most profound liberations in human history. You're free from the sun. You can work when you want, learn when you want, socialize when you want, live according to your rhythm instead of the Earth's rotation. 24 hours are yours to allocate. Night shift workers exist. Students pull all-nighters. Creative people work at 3 a.m. if that's when inspiration strikes. Time is still limited, but it's your limitation to manage, not nature's dictate to obey. So tonight, when you turn on a light after sunset, recognize what you're doing. You're exercising a freedom your ancestors never had. The freedom from darkness. The freedom from time tyranny. The freedom to be human on your own terms instead of the sun's schedule. That light switch is liberty. Hash the cost of youth, childhood as myth. Let me tell you about something that's going to fundamentally change how you think about childhood. Right now, we have an entire developmental stage between birth and adulthood where children are expected to play, learn, grow, and explore without major responsibilities. We protect childhood. We extend it. We consider it a crucial period for healthy human development. Colonial America had no concept of childhood as we understand it. Children were just small adults who happened to be less capable, and the moment they could contribute to survival, usually around age 6 or 7, their childhood ended and their working life began. Let's be very clear about what this means. At 6 years old, you're not playing with toys or attending school or developing your personality through exploration. You're hauling water, feeding chickens, watching younger siblings, helping with cooking, doing genuinely necessary work that if left undone means the family suffers. This isn't light chores you do before playing. This is your life. 8, 10, 12 hours a day of actual labor. Physical, demanding, necessary labor. You're a farmhand who happens to be 3 feet tall. Your childhood, the protected developmental period we consider essential, just doesn't exist. Education is a luxury most can't afford. Some colonies have schools, but attendance is spotty because children are needed for work. You might learn basic reading and arithmetic if someone has time to teach you, but formal education takes a back seat to survival. Most children grow up functionally illiterate because literacy doesn't feed the family. And we're not talking about light farm work. 6-year-olds are operating dangerous tools, handling large animals, working near open fires, carrying heavy loads. The idea that children shouldn't do hazardous work because they're still developing doesn't exist. You're capable of the task. You do the task. Safety is secondary to necessity. The physical toll is severe. Children's bodies are still growing, still developing, and they're being used for hard labor that damages growing bones and joints. Stunted growth is common. Childhood injuries that never properly heal create lifelong disabilities, bodies worn out before they're fully formed. But the psychological cost might be even worse. Play, which we now understand is crucial for cognitive and emotional development, barely exists. You might get brief moments of fun between tasks, but extended imaginative play, the kind that builds creativity and problem-solving skills, is seen as wasteful. Time spent playing is time not spent working, and the family can't afford it. Emotional development suffers too. Children are expected to be miniature adults, controlling emotions, following orders, working without complaint. The tantrums and emotional outbursts we recognize as normal developmental behavior are punished harshly because the family can't afford emotional chaos when survival is at stake. Attachment is complicated. With infant mortality so high, parents often emotionally distance themselves from babies and young children to protect themselves from inevitable grief. Children grow up knowing they might not have been celebrated at birth, might not be deeply mourned if they die, because emotional investment in something so fragile is too painful. And then there's the matter of child mortality itself, which reshapes how childhood is experienced. 1 in 3 children dies before age 5. If you survive to 10, you're lucky. If you make it to adulthood, you're exceptional. This creates a childhood lived under the shadow of death, where being a child isn't a protected stage but a vulnerable period you're trying to survive. Peer relationships are limited. You're working alongside adults and siblings, not playing with age mates. Friendship requires leisure time and proximity, neither of which are readily available. Your social development happens in multi-generational work settings, not through age-appropriate peer interaction. And there's no adolescence at all. The concept of teenagers as a distinct developmental stage doesn't exist. You go from child to adult with no transition period. Girls might marry at 14 or 15. Boys take on full adult responsibilities as soon as they're physically capable. The identity exploration and experimentation we consider normal teenage behavior, not even a possibility. The long-term consequences of losing childhood are staggering. You don't develop crucial cognitive skills that come from play. You don't build emotional regulation through supported exploration. You don't discover who you are beyond your work function. You just become a worker, and your personality, interests, and potential are all subordinated to utility. Innovation suffers when childhood is eliminated. Many human breakthroughs come from people who had time to wonder, to play, to imagine different possibilities. When everyone spends childhood working, there's no space for the kind of creative thinking that drives progress. Modern childhood isn't perfect. We have our own problems with overscheduling and pressure. But we've created something revolutionary, a protected developmental stage where children can grow, learn, play, and become themselves before facing adult responsibilities. Your childhood, however it went, was a luxury most humans throughout history didn't have. The fact that you got to play, to learn without working full-time, to develop your interests and personality, represents a fundamental shift in how humans treat their young. So when you see children playing, remember what you're witnessing. Not just kids having fun, but the exercise of a right that was fought for, argued for, and finally established. The right to be young, the right to grow before being used, the right to childhood. That's not natural, that's progress. Conclusion, the weight of what we've forgotten. We've spent 2 hours together walking through a world that would destroy most of us within days. A world of constant physical discomfort and relentless danger. A world where privacy doesn't exist and choice is illusion. A world where your body betrays you and knowledge fails you. A world where cleanliness is impossible and connection is fractured. A world where time enslaves you and childhood is stolen. And here's what I need you to understand. That world was normal. For thousands of years, that's just how humans lived. The suffering we've discussed wasn't exceptional tragedy. It was Tuesday, every single day for everyone forever. The comfort, safety, health, freedom, knowledge, and opportunity you experience right now, that's the aberration. That's the exception. That's the miracle. We live in a world our ancestors would consider paradise. You have heating and cooling you control with a button. You have food variety they couldn't imagine. You have medical care that would seem like magic. You have communication across any distance. You have time that's yours to allocate. You have freedom to make choices about your life. You have knowledge about how the world actually works. You have cleanliness as a daily reality. You have privacy and personal space. You have a protected childhood, an extended lifespan. Every single one of these things required centuries of human effort, innovation, sacrifice, and progress. People fought for labor rights so you don't work 16-hour days. Scientists pursued knowledge so you understand disease. Engineers developed technology so you have clean water and electricity. Social movements demanded privacy and personal freedom. Educators insisted children deserve childhood. Medical researchers extended your lifespan by decades. The modern world you inhabit isn't an accident. It's an achievement, one of humanity's greatest achievements. We took the nightmare of colonial existence and systematically addressed every problem through progress that built on itself, generation after generation, until we arrived at a world that would seem like heaven to anyone from the past. But here's the thing about progress. It's fragile. It requires maintenance. It requires knowledge of what came before so we don't accidentally slide backward. It requires appreciation so we protect what we have. It requires gratitude so we don't take for granted things people died to give us. When you complain about minor inconveniences, remember what actual hardship looks like. When you take for granted your comfortable life, remember what comfort costs to achieve. When you waste food, remember people who starved with full pantries because they didn't understand nutrition. When you skip the doctor, remember people who died of easily preventable diseases. When you ignore your freedom to choose, remember people who had none. This isn't about guilt. It's about perspective. It's about recognizing that you've won the lottery of human existence by being born now instead of then. And with that recognition should come both gratitude for what you have and responsibility to protect and extend it. Because here's the truth. The hidden costs we've explored today, those aren't historical curiosities. For much of the world's population, these costs are current reality. People still live without clean water, adequate medical care, personal freedom, or protected childhood. The progress that liberated you hasn't reached everyone. The work isn't finished. So what do you do with this knowledge? First, stop romanticizing the past. The good old days were terrible. They were painful, dangerous, unfree, and short. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something or doesn't understand history. Second, appreciate what you have. Not in an abstract way, but concretely. Thank the infrastructure that brings clean water to your tap. Thank the medical knowledge that keeps you healthy. Thank the social progress that gave you rights and freedoms. Thank the technology that connects you to the world. Express that gratitude through how you live. Third, protect progress. Vote for people who understand public health, education, infrastructure, and freedom matter. Support policies that extend modern benefits to more people. Resist movements that would roll back hard-won rights and protections. Progress isn't inevitable. It requires active defense. Fourth, share perspective. When people around you complain about trivial problems or claim they could have survived in simpler times, gently remind them what those times actually entailed. Help others understand what they have so they value it properly. And finally, remember that you're living in the future your ancestors dreamed of. They died hoping their children would have better lives. Generation after generation made sacrifices so that eventually someone would live in comfort and safety. You're that someone. Their dreams came true in you. Honor that. Live well, appreciate deeply, protect fiercely. And when you turn on a light, adjust your temperature, drink clean water, or access the sum of human knowledge, take 1 second to feel grateful for the miracle you're experiencing. Because it is a miracle, the miracle of progress, the miracle of human achievement, the miracle of living now instead of then. Thank you for spending these 2 hours with me. If this gave you new perspective on your life, share it with someone who needs it. If it made you grateful, express that gratitude through how you live. And if it made you realize how good you have it, remember that feeling next time you're tempted to complain about your Wi-Fi. Until next time, stay grateful, stay aware, and maybe give your thermostat a little nod of appreciation. Your colonial ancestors would have killed for that button. Good night.